You've attended today for the Biopsychosocial Model and My Pain webinar with Dr. May Caprio. And my name is Tanya Hyde, and I work with the Canadian Institute for the Relief of Pain and Disability. And we do online educational webinars has been one of our current focuses, particularly on chronic pain. We also have a series that's running on return to work, stay at work as well. But I'm glad you've all attended both live and online for today's session. This webinar series is sponsored both by my organization, Canadian Institute for the Relief of Pain and Disability, as well as by Pain BC. As I mentioned, I'm Tanya, and today we also have Michael Millman, so I'll actually hand it over to him to come up and introduce Pain BC.
Thank you, Tanya. So as Tanya mentioned, I'm Michael Millman from Pain BC, and before I introduce Dr. Caprio, I just wanted to quickly tell you a little bit about Pain BC. So we're a nonprofit organization that's made up of patients and healthcare providers and others that have a shared passion for reducing the burden of pain in British Columbia. And how we go about that is through three pillars of pain reduction. The first one is educating, promoting skill development, and building hope and confidence for people living with pain and their families. So an example of that work is we've developed a community on Facebook of over 3,600 people who share resources and find peer support, and we translate the latest research for them there. We also sponsor and produce workshops and webinars like this one, and we've got a like this one that we're very proud to be co-sponsoring with the CIRPD, and we've got an upcoming webinar in May entitled Empowering Self-Management of Pain with Neil Pearson. So if you want to learn more about that, you can do so at our website, which is painbc.ca. It's a free webinar series. The second pillar is providing healthcare practitioners with the skills and tools to better assess and manage chronic pain. So we have an annual pain management conference where we invite healthcare practitioners from across the province and teach them the latest on pain management. The theme for this year's conference is Pain in the Brain. And we also are working with the BC Medical Association on a practice support program that will train hundreds of GPs and specialists across the province on how to better assess and manage chronic pain. The third pillar is facilitating innovation and improvements in the healthcare system. So we work with health authorities on initiatives such as we've got a Nurse Pain Champion pilot program in 6 Fraser Health hospitals, which basically will improve acute pain management to try to prevent it from turning into chronic pain. And we're also working with the Fraser and Interior Regional Health Authorities on regional pain programs and developing regional pain programs for the North as well. So please check us out at Pain BC, and without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. May Caprio. Dr. Caprio is a registrant of the College of Psychologists of British Columbia, working as a psychologist with the pain program in the anesthesia and surgical services at the Royal Jubilee Hospital here in Victoria. She practiced in the area of neuropsychology with the Brain Injury Rehabilitation Center and the Brock Institute. Dr. Caprio was the staff psychologist at the Calgary Police Services for 8 years, where she provided support to officers and their families, conducted risk assessments, and worked extensively with trauma. Currently, Dr. Caprio sees many patients with chronic pain as a member of the multidisciplinary pain here at the hospital. Welcome, Dr. Caprio.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah? Can you hear me in the very back? Okay. If my voice starts to come down, just signal to me, please. Okay? There has been an explosion of research in chronic pain in the last 10 to 15 years, while showing that the research is, it seems to be that to understand pain, we have to acknowledge not only the biomedical aspect of pain, but also factors that include all of the individual. The biopsychosocial model is the most widely accepted perspective to understanding chronic pain. Back in the 1980s, I took a course, a graduate level course at the University of Calgary Medical School. It was taught by a physician, medical researcher, and a nurse psychologist, Drs. Martin and Marion Jerry. The title of the course, and this was back in the 1980s, was Psychoneuroimmunology, and it was based on the biopsychosocial model. I was so excited that a course like this at that time was being taught. When you break down the name of the course, you get psyche, meaning the mind, neuro, meaning the nervous system, immunology, meaning the immune system. The course focused on the scientific findings of the interaction between the mind, the nervous system, and the immune system. In the 1980s, this was forging new ground. For my colleagues that were born in the 1980s, this is old news. We've come a long way since then, but there's still so much more that we need to understand to know how to properly treat pain. Every year there are conferences across the country attended by physicians, occupational therapists, physical therapists, nurses, psychologists, physicians, all, and people who are in pain, who are dealing with their own pain, all dedicated to further understanding and treating pain. Chronic pain can be loosely defined as prolonged and persistent pain of about 3 months. Chronic pain affects 10 to 20% of adults and accounts for about 80% of all physician visits. That's a lot of people affected by pain. The experience of chronic pain is deeply personal. So what does the biopsychosocial model have to do with each one of us? A lot. A comprehensive understanding of chronic pain requires a comprehensive model of chronic pain. This has been clear by the many curious and puzzling observations about pain that have been raised over the years that have not always had clear explanations. For example, how is it that something like a soft touch of the feather can trigger a pain response? How is it that the location of pain and the tissue damage in my body are registering in 2 different places? How is it that pain can persist long after the wound is healed? How is it that the experience of pain seems to move in my body? It changes from one location to another location. Why is it that when I'm under stress, it seems like my pain levels go up? Or when I have an argument with someone and, with a loved one, and I find my pain levels skyrocket. When I get really tired and I'm exhausted, why is it that the pain levels seem to go up? And how is it that if a limb is amputated, the signal of pain is registering as if my limb is still there and I'm in excruciating pain? How can these things be? This is where the biopsychosocial model comes into play. Chronic pain affects and is affected by our physiology, our emotions, our beliefs, our thoughts. Pain is a very complicated phenomena, and chronic pain is even more complicated. This is the definition of the biopsychosocial model as it pertains to pain. The biopsychosocial model is the interrelationship between biological changes, psychological impact, and socio-cultural context that all need to be considered to understand the perception and the response to pain. Knowing that physical harm is occurring to our body sets off all of the alarm bells to do something to protect yourself. For example, if you touch a hot stove, you register stimulation from the nerve cells that your body is in danger, and for you to do something, to take corrective action. This is an acute pain reaction. But what happens when the alarm rings and there is apparently no more damage that's occurring, which is oftentimes the case with chronic pain? The wound is healed, but the pain signal continues to fire. When this happens, the body goes into a heightened state of urgency, and an urgency that the pain response and the stress response and the stress reaction in the body gets triggered for you to do something, even though there's nothing obvious for you to correct or to change or to do. A heightened state of urgency or stress caused by the chronic pain can set off a chain of events in the body that can actually amplify the experience of pain. The stressor can be a migraine headache that just won't go away, or lower back pain that's stopping you from getting to work. An example of how chronic pain is a stressor can lead to more pain and more stress is the involvement of the HPA axis. We'll be coming back to this slide in just a moment. Okay, here's a quick version of the involvement of the HPA axis during stress. H, and bear with me here, H stands for hypothalamus. It's the size of a pea or an almond. It's in the brain, and it regulates things like body temperature, hunger, fatigue, sleep. P stands for pituitary gland. It's a small bean-shaped gland. It sits just below the brain and the skull. And A stands for the adrenal glands. And these are two rectangular-shaped glands that sit on top of the kidneys. But this is a simplified version for the general public. So bear with me as this will all fit together here in just a moment. Okay, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is part of the endocrine system. It controls reactions to stress. It regulates the immune system, digestion, and energy usage. In response to a significant stressor, the hypothalamus releases the corticotrophin-releasing hormone, or CRH. You don't need to memorize this. CRH stimulates the pituitary gland to release adrenal corticotropin hormone, or ACTH. After it enters the bloodstream, ACTH acts on the adrenal glands, which produce a crucial hormone for survival, like cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine. The reason why we need cortisol is that it increases our blood sugar, it increases our blood pressure, it suppresses the immune system, all important for survival, fighting off a predator or running for our lives. However, excessive cortisol is associated with increased inflammation, increased pain. It predisposes a person to insulin resistance that can lead to type 2 diabetes, and high levels of cortisol are being linked to obesity, chronic high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. The stress response keeps us alive for the short term, but we cannot sustain that level of urgency indefinitely. without wear and tear on the body. So coming back to the slide, when a person is experiencing significant stress, like pain, it can set off a chain of events in the body that can amplify the experience of pain. An example of this would be an arthritic big toe that seems to become even more painful after an argument with your spouse, or a shoulder that feels even more painful after you receive a huge bill in the mail that you weren't expecting. Chronic pain is a system all of its own in the human body that must be understood to effectively treat and manage the 10 to 20% of adults that are dramatically affected by it. The biopsychosocial model has replaced the biomedical model for chronic pain that indicated that pain was caused only by damage or injury to the body. Interestingly, now even the biopsychosocial model is partially outdated and being replaced by more in-depth models that are reflecting the complexity of what chronic pain really is. The biopsychosocial model makes it clear that there's tremendous opportunity for ways that we can affect our pain and manage our pain. Medical researchers are finding out new information about how pain works, right down to identifying the very gene that expresses pain. While updated treatments for pain are becoming available through medical science research, we now know that the choices that we make in our daily life can directly impact our experience of pain. This is evident by the observations from the people that come through our pain program at the Royal Jubilee Hospital every day. Sometimes pain levels seem to be more tolerable when I'm really involved in doing something I enjoy, when I exercise, when I eat well, when I seem to get along well with my family and with my friends. It seems that pain levels are more tolerable when I have a sense of control in my life, when I keep my stress at bay, when I laugh. We had to remove your brain for a couple of days, so just try to relax. Now, make note to yourself. There are those of you that chuckled at the last cartoon, and there are those of you that may not have appreciated the humor with such a serious topic as chronic pain. We all have personality characteristics or a temperament, like a lens that we view the world. The biopsychosocial model also takes this into account as very important when it comes to the experience of pain. Each one of us has beliefs about pain that have been shaped by our experience, by our history, by learning from others. These life experiences interact with our personality characteristics or our temperament. Our temperament or personality, at least partially, is inherited or genetic and tend to be fairly consistent throughout our lives. Interestingly, research is showing that our personality or our temperament can make us more vulnerable to the experience of pain or more resilient to the experience of pain. So how does my personality or temperament affect how I deal with pain? This is called the vulnerability factor and the resiliency factor. Your personality characteristics or your temperament can either be a vulnerability factor, making you more vulnerable, or a resiliency factor, making you more resilient when it comes to dealing with the experience of pain. What makes me more vulnerable when dealing with pain? Negative affectivity is a general tendency to see the world as a threatening and distressing place. From this perspective, much of a person's experience is interpreted as potentially harmful and indicating something alarming. A person with characteristics of high anxiety sensitivity interprets unpleasant physical sensations like a rapid heartbeat or feeling dizzy as a sign of danger more than somebody with low anxiety sensitivity. A person with high levels of anxiety sensitivity becomes very distressed, even anticipating that they may experience pain, and they will go to great lengths to avoid pain or rapid heartbeat or feeling dizzy, even at the expense of their own well-being, like staying in bed all day, moving as little as possible, taking too much pain medication. A person with characteristics of illness, injury sensitivity worries about his or her future physical condition with regard to getting injured and will tend to think of the worst case possible scenario. This has also been described as catastrophic thinking. This may also be called wisdom to keep you safe, but if it's to such an extreme, then you may be afraid to do anything physically active or anything at all that you feel may put you at risk. These tendencies may make it more difficult for you to deal with the experience of chronic pain and may make you also more susceptible to the debilitating effects of chronic pain. What makes me more resilient dealing with chronic pain? Optimism may be one of the most important personality factors in relation to dealing with chronic pain. Optimism is the tendency to believe that you will generally experience good versus bad outcomes in life. Optimism has been found to be associated with better general health, greater ability to adapt to chronic illness, and also recovery after a major surgery. Also, there seems to be a relationship between how optimistic you are and how much unpleasantness you can tolerate. One of the main differences between optimistic people and pessimistic people is that optimistic people tend to be more problem-focused, problem-solving focused, meaning they'll put more effort to problem-solving. And when problem-solving doesn't work, they will use humor, or they'll use positive reframing, meaning they'll try to find a positive angle, or acceptance, meaning that the pain, acceptance meaning not that the pain is okay, but that the situation is as it is and they're just going to have to work with it. Those of us that tend to be more pessimistic in our outlook tend to use avoidance and denial that often lead to less effective ways of dealing with pain, like sleeping all day or not taking your medication until it gets so high that when you finally do take your medication, the pain levels are not even touched by the help of the medication. It may not be so much the coping strategies that optimistic people use, but rather flexibility of ways that they cope that protect people that are optimistic from the debilitating effects of chronic pain. Is it possible to increase my resiliency to chronic pain? Is it possible to decrease the vulnerability of chronic pain? Absolutely. These are just a few ways to lessen the debilitating effects of the experience of pain and to increase your resiliency. Cognitive behavior therapy, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, mindfulness-based stress reduction, acceptance and commitment therapy, breath awareness, meditation, address sleep problems. Let's spend the next few minutes reviewing some of these. Many people have heard of cognitive behavior therapy. It was developed in the early 1980s. The premise of cognitive behavior therapy is that changing some of our beliefs and assumptions that we have about chronic pain will lead to a change in our emotions and our behaviors. Cognitive behavior therapy is an empirically based psychotherapy that's been successful in treating everything from anxiety, depression, eating disorders, smoking, and not surprisingly, it has been applied to chronic pain and many other areas as well. Cognitive behavior therapy challenges some of the beliefs and assumptions that we have about chronic pain that may not be accurate. For example, how many of you have found yourself saying during a flare-up, a pain flare-up, this pain will never get better? And you truly feel that that's the case at that moment in time. Even though you know that the pain will often reduce in intensity if you take a warm bath, if you take your medication properly, if you listen to some soothing music. The thought that it will never get better leads to feelings of hopelessness, anxiety, and oftentimes we feel less motivated to do anything at all, and certainly not to problem solve. These feelings of distress activates the stress reaction system that we touched upon before. Remember the HPA axis? The pain will never get better is an example of the cognitive distortion of overgeneralization. What is a cognitive distortion? If you really want to become anxious and depressed, this is how to do it. Cognitive distortions in the context of pain are ways of thinking about pain that can cause a lot of distress. They're called cognitive distortions because they're oftentimes not based in reality. They're oftentimes not true, not accurate. And this is a list of cognitive distortions that were developed from psychiatrist Dr. David Burns back in the 1980s. He found that there were 10 common cognitive distortions or ways of thinking that dramatically can fuel a person's catastrophic thinking and levels of distress. So let's review some of these. I already mentioned the cognitive distortion of overgeneralization. This is seeing one negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. This pain will never end. I'll never be able to enjoy anything anymore. All or nothing thinking. You evaluate people or situations in extreme black and white terms. So if you can't go curling, then I can't enjoy the sport at all anymore, ever. If I have to leave dinner early, then why should I even go at all if I can't tolerate sitting for a short period of time? Mental filtering. This is where you let one single negative experience negatively color the whole situation. For example, let's say you go on a trip, you left your therapeutic pillow at home. All you can think about is how the whole trip is ruined and that you won't be able to sleep comfortably, even though you know that other pillows will probably work. Disqualifying the positive. This is where you take a neutral or even positive experience and turn it into a negative one. A friend comes over and says how great you look, and you think, I feel terrible. He doesn't understand. Or jumping to conclusions. You quickly jumping to a negative conclusion that is not justified by the facts of the situation. For example, mind reading. You assume you know why someone does what he or she does, and you don't bother to check it out. For example, sitting in the doctor's office and you think to yourself, the doctor thinks I'm faking it. The doctor doesn't really think I have pain at all. Well, you may be thinking that and may or may not be accurate. And if you're believing that and it's not accurate and you have a doctor that you think doesn't understand your pain, then you're in big trouble. You need to check it out. Or fortune telling. You know that things will turn out badly and you're predicted as an established fact. Well, it may or may not be true. Magnification and Minification. You have a painful flare-up and you say to yourself, I can't stand this. I can't take this anymore. Well, as a matter of fact, however, you can. You may not want to, and that's okay, but you can take it. Or you take a personal positive quality or an event and you dismiss their importance. Like you receive a compliment and you think, well, what good is it if I can't participate in the activities? So these are all ways to make yourself really miserable. Catching cognitive distortions takes practice, and it's a skill. It takes time and effort to develop. These cognitive distortions are oftentimes such fleeting thoughts that first you must catch them and be aware of what it is that you're thinking. Then you can decide, is it true? If it's not based in fact, then you need to replace it with something more accurate. Catching these cognitive distortions is only one aspect of cognitive behavior therapy, although it gives you an idea of how it works. We have reviewed cognitive behavior therapy. Now let's talk about other ways to lessen the debilitating experience of pain and ways to increase our resiliency. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is a way of being that recently has received much attention in the popular literature and now also in peer-reviewed journals. There has been an effort to establish a definition of mindfulness, and one definition is mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to things as they are. Mindfulness focuses on becoming aware of all thoughts, feelings, sensations, and observing them, but not attaching or reacting to them. It focuses on adopting a way to observe your thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, while placing little emphasis on trying to alter or change specific thoughts like the cognitive behavior therapy did. Research findings are indicating that mindfulness is effective for the treatment of depression and anxiety, two emotions that are commonly associated with chronic pain. The three most commonly reported emotions with those people in chronic pain are anxiety, depression, and anger. The concept of mindfulness is incorporated into several therapies, such as mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy. So what does this look like? Mindfulness-based stress reduction combines meditation with elements of yoga and education about stress and coping strategies. It was developed at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn and his colleagues going back to the 1980s. they implemented clinical studies using mindfulness with chronic pain patients. It was hypothesized that training people to use mindfulness would reduce pain by changing a person's emotional response to their pain and increasing their coping strategies of acceptance. It was found that chronic pain patients significantly improved their pain symptoms and their overall quality of life even 4 years later. Since then, there have been other approaches using the concept of mindfulness, such as mindfulness-based cognitive therapy that combines the mindfulness-based stress reduction, the meditation, elements of yoga, stress and coping strategies, with principles of cognitive behavior therapy that we talked about earlier. Remember the cognitive distortions, ways of thinking that can make you really anxious and depressed? Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy places less emphasis on changing or altering thoughts, but rather focusing on a person's awareness of their relationship and how they experience being with their thoughts and being with their feelings and physical sensations. Another approach that includes the concept of mindfulness is acceptance and commitment therapy. Acceptance and commitment therapy is an empirically based psychological intervention that uses the idea of acceptance and mindfulness strategies that include being aware and noticing thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, and memories. Acceptance and commitment therapy encourages a person to accept their own reactions and be present as a witness to their reactions. It focuses on choosing a direction in their life that they value and that has meaning to them, and then taking action in that direction. We've just covered 3 therapeutic approaches that use the concept of mindfulness that have promising results for dealing with chronic pain. Remember, mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to things as they are. Now, can you still hear me in the back? Is my voice clear? Okay. Let's do an experiment that uses the concept of mindfulness right now. Just observe yourself as you go through the process without judgment or analysis. Just pay attention and observe yourself. There are no expectations for outcome. Just notice how you respond, just as things are. Right now, you've been sitting for just over 30 minutes, and you probably are feeling it. So, right now, on a scale from 0 to 10, I would like you to rate your current pain. 0, pain, it would be no pain at all. 10 would be the most pain that you have ever experienced. So, just for a moment, rate the amount of pain on our scale from 0 to 10 and put that number aside for just a moment. Now, become aware of the place that you're sitting, how the chair feels beneath you. Notice the floor beneath your feet. Become aware of your breath as you inhale and as you exhale. Notice if the breath stops at the chest, and if it does, just gently bring it down into the diaphragm. Allow it to deepen gently and slightly. You'll notice a smooth transition between the inhalation and the exhalation. On the next exhalation, I would like you to say in your mind the number 5. As you inhale, 4. 3 as you exhale. 2 as you inhale. And 1 as you exhale. Then 1 as you inhale. 2 as you exhale. 3 as you inhale. 4 as you exhale. And 5 as you inhale. And at your own pace, complete the 5 to 1 and 1 back up to 5 breathing again. If your mind wanders, bring it back to the number and to the breath. So you're counting the breath again from 5 to 1 and 1 back up to 5 at your own pace. And then I would like you to do that for a 3rd rotation and final rotation. Counting your breath from 5 to 1 and 1 back up to 5. Now, just notice, what is your current level of pain on the 10-point scale? Again, at this moment, just rate your pain. What was it before? Just make note what the pain level was before and make note of what it is now. Now, how many of you noticed that your pain levels decreased? How many of you noticed that pain levels increased? I usually get at least one person. How many people noticed that there was no change? Okay, so just make note of that. As you look down the list, you'll notice that meditation is another potential way to lessen the debilitating effects of the experience of pain and increasing resiliency. Neuroimaging techniques of the brain are providing an opportunity for us to understand why meditation can produce pain-relieving effects in the brain. This topic requires a presentation all of its own to cover the research that's now available. More sensitive technology and increased interest in the area of meditation is creating a huge opportunity for people to have another way to address pain. What does the preliminary research tell us about the effects of meditation on the experience of pain? Zeden, a researcher at Wake Forest School of Medicine in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and his colleagues in the UK and Germany found that meditating as little as 20 minutes for 4 times can result in a significant reduction in the experience of pain and also reduce the part of the brain that gets activated when we are in pain. This was a study that was published in the Journal of Neuroscience in 2011 and used meditation, a meditation technique that is called focused attention. Two types of meditation are being defined in the research, and they are open monitoring meditation, where you're receptive to all the thoughts and sensations and experiences without focusing attention on a particular concept or an object. And then the other type of meditation that is being acknowledged in the research is focused attention meditation, where you focus on a particular thought or object. Apparently, the outcome of the effects of meditation can be different depending upon the meditation technique used, the level of experience of the meditator, and also the type of pain that's being experienced. Research is needed to determine what aspects of meditation are responsible for the changes in the experience of pain, and what practice or form of meditation lead to what types of changes. These are some of the documented effects of meditation that are relevant to chronic pain. Apparently, for experienced meditators, they're finding that there's a thickening in the cortical regions within the brain that has to do with the processing of pain. It appears that there is a less of an anticipation that a person will experience pain. They're finding that there's a decreased activation of a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is highly involved in regulation of emotion. It becomes less activated with certain types of meditation. Apparently, there is a decrease of anxiety that people experience with meditation. There's an increase in positive affect, positive emotion in general, and also there is an enhancement in the immune system. This will be an interesting area of study to watch in the future for its potential contribution to dealing with chronic pain. Now, just a few words to address sleep on our quest to lessen the debilitating effects of the experience of pain and increase our resiliency. Is my voice still carrying in the back of the room there? Okay. 1 in 5 Canadians, or 6.8 million people, report to have chronic pain. And of that, 50 to 93% of people with chronic pain report poor sleep. Pain wakes us up and disrupts our sleep. What makes us even more sensitive and vulnerable to the experience of pain? Not letting our mind and our body rest. When we are tired, it takes less pain for us to experience that same level of pain. There's a vicious cycle that can happen between the lack of restful sleep and chronic pain, making the other worse. So there's a bidirectional relationship between sleep and pain. Pain makes sleep worse. Lack of sleep makes pain worse. What else does the literature tell us about sleep and pain? Well, the more pain you have, the more time you spend in light sleep, the less time you spend in restorative deep sleep. Your muscles feel more achy when you do not get enough deep sleep, even if you're not dealing with chronic pain. It is clear that sleep is a problem when it comes to chronic pain for many people. We know how to make sleep worse, such as sleeping too much actually makes sleep worse. Trying to compensate for not sleeping enough makes sleep worse. Going to bed and waking up at different times makes our sleep worse. Social isolation interferes with sleep, as does lack of physical exercise and motion, moving, and lack of sunlight. It's clear that what you do during the day affects what happens when you attempt to sleep at night. This slide tells us when it's the easiest to fall asleep. Apparently, it's when you're in class or at work. The least likely place for you to fall asleep is in your bed. This is a joke, of course. What we do know for a fact is that you cannot make yourself sleep no matter how hard you try or how much you need it. This anxiety and frustration triggers the stress response that we spoke about earlier, that increases your heart rate, increases your blood pressure, your muscle tension, your breathing, your brain waves. The stress response activates your brain wakefulness system and weakens the pressure to sleep on your brain. You just cannot make yourself sleep. I decided to develop a 4-week pilot project at the Royal Jubilee Hospital Pain Program using approaches from the research that look promising to help those of us suffering from sleep problems and chronic pain. These approaches include such things as sleep restriction, stimulus control, sleep hygiene, addressing cognitive distortions about sleep, stress management strategies, and yoga nidra or yogic sleep. Feedback from the participants so far have been positive for the most part, and preliminary pre-test and post-test results show a significant improvement in mood and well-being, including activities of daily life measures and also sleep and pain. Yes, the experience of chronic pain is deeply personal, and so is the biopsychosocial model when it comes to our own well-being. In this presentation, I have identified what the biopsychosocial model has to do with pain and why it matters. I've described the connection between the stress response and the HPA axis and pain, and we have discussed some of the ways to lessen the debilitating effects of the experience of pain and lessen ways, to enhance ways for our resiliency when dealing with pain. Pain implicates a unique interaction between the biological, the psychological, and social factors of who we are. Acknowledging the whole person is far more effective than merely focusing on only one aspect of a person. The biopsychosocial approach to understanding pain brings us a multitude of options and possibilities. This completes my presentation, and I hope that you can take something away from it that is going to be useful to you. I would like to thank Tanya Hyde from the Canadian Institute for the Relief of Pain and Disability and Michael Millman from Pain BC for traveling out here on the ferry early this morning to come to Victoria. To ensure that everything ran smoothly and we had our technical glitches that were figured out. And also I'd like to thank the Canadian Institute for the Relief of Pain and Disability and Pain BC for all their hard work and efforts to keep people informed of the resources and the educational materials in search of answers around the topic of chronic pain. So thank you very much for coming out today.
We do have just a few moments if there are any questions in the audience. just for the people who are online, there was a question about the sleep program and whether she's hosting it here and when they are happening.
Well, it just so happens that the person who is running the sleep program with me is here with us today. Actually, Linda's our occupational therapist, and she has just been wonderful on the multidisciplinary team here at the Royal Jubilee Hospital. Would you like to, well, maybe I'll just say in a nutshell that the sleep program is going to be an ongoing 4-week program, and Linda is the person to contact with regard to the education series that we have here at the Royal Jubilee Hospital that is open to people through their family physician. Every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, everyone is invited, family members, people dealing with pain, spouses, to come to an orientation. It's a 1-hour orientation at 4 o'clock on Tuesdays. And the dedication that Linda has to being there and to those people that are working on the team always make sure that this is a resource available to everyone. So I hope that answers your questions on a couple of different levels. If you want to become involved in the sleep program, we require that you have a basic understanding from the education series through the Royal Jubilee Hospital pain program. So we ask that you go through the education series, which is 4 weeks. And the way, actually, I have some handouts here if anybody's interested in contact information for whether it's for the orientation, the 1-hour orientation on Tuesdays, for the pain education series, and also for the sleep program. This is the contact information. And also, there are other groups that are running that we are very fortunate to have such a creative, multidisciplinary staff and team here, both here and also in the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. They have a program up there as well for chronic pain. And we're very fortunate here on the island, and in Comox as well. So there's some gems here of information and resources that you can tap into. And I'll just leave this up here on the table for contact information.
Yeah, thank you for Royal Jubilee Hospital for hosting us, as well as for Dr. May Caprio. That was a great presentation. Thank you very much.